Hi students, welcome to yet another session of my class. We are discussing the paper Word Classics. In the last class, we discussed about German literature and some of the important writers in that particular stream. Today, we are going to discuss about Russian literature and some of the important figures in Russian literature. So, let us discuss in detail. What do you mean by this Russian literature? Russian literature refers to the literature of Russia. So basically we can say that it is the literature of Russia and moreover the literature of several independent nations once a part of what was historically the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union. That is Soviet Union. You all are familiar with this name, Soviet Union. So it uh, refers to this Russian literature refers to the literature of Russia and the literature of several independent nations once a part of what was historically called the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union. Then the origin of Russian literature or the roots of Russian literature can be traced to the Middle Ages, when epics and chronicles in Old East Slavic were composed. Old East Slavic is a dialect. So the roots of Russian literature, it can be traced to the Middle Ages, where when epics and chronicles in Old East Slavic were composed. By the age of enlightenment, I already discussed in the previous class, that is when we discussed about German literature. I think all of you are familiar with the term enlightenment, that is age of enlightenment. By the age of enlightenment, literature had grown in importance, and from the early 1830s, Russian literature underwent a golden age in poetry, prose and drama. Yes, that is during that particular period, that is from the early 1830s, this Russian literature underwent a golden age. It was a golden age, that is almost all literary genres, poetry, prose and drama developed during that particular period, that is early 1830s, that is in Russian literature. The first great Russian novelist was Nikolai Gogol. Please note that figure. The first great Russian novelist was Nikolai Gogol. Then came Ivan Turgenev, another important figure in Russian literature, and he mastered both short stories and novels. First one, Nikolai Gogol, he was a novelist. Then second one, Ivan Turgenev, he mastered both short stories and novels. Then Leo Tolstoy and Fyodor Dostoevsky. You all are very familiar with these two great writers. Name, that is Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy, we all know that his very famous works, that is War and Peace and Anna Karenina. Then Fyodor Dostoevsky, another figure, that is his very famous work Crime and Punishment. So Leo Tolstoy and Fyodor Dostoevsky soon became internationally renowned. And the beginning of the 20th century ranks as the silver age of Russian poetry, like our Elizabethan age, that is considered as the golden age in English language and literature. Like that, the beginning of the 20th century ranks as the silver age of Russian poetry. In the 1930s, socialist realism became the predominant trend in Russia. What do you mean by the socialist realism? That is, it glorified the characteristics of socialist realism, means it glorified the depiction of communist values, especially the emancipation of proletariats. Emancipation means free from bondage. Proletariats means working class people. We all know that the Marxism or Marxist theory is all about capitalism and proletariat. The relationship between capitalist and proletariat. That is the capitalist, that is upper class or the ruling or the aristocrats, and the proletariats means working class or the labor class people. So emancipation means that free from bondage. We all know that at all time these proletariats or working class or labor class people were suppressed or oppressed by these capitalists or the upper class. So in the 1930s, socialist realism, that is the characteristics of socialist realism is the depiction of communist values, especially this emancipation of proletariats. That emancipation means free from bondage. So in the 1930s, socialist realism became the predominant trend in Russia, and its leading figure was Maxim Gorky. Then, Russian literature is divided into four periods. That is, we can broadly divide this Russian literature into four periods, mainly four periods. They are pre-Petrine or otherwise called Old Russian period, then Imperial period, then post-revolutionary and post-Soviet. These are the four important periods in Russian literature. It is a broad division. So Russian literature, that is broadly divided into four periods. They are pre-Petrine or Old Russian, Imperial, post-revolutionary and post-Soviet. Then Russian literature, especially of the two periods, that is Imperial and post-revolutionary periods, has its own defining characteristics. What are the characteristics here? That is intense concern with the philosophical problems, then, a constant self-consciousness about its relation to the cultures of the West. Then, strong tendency toward formal innovation and defiance of received generic norms. So, these three are the important characteristic features defined here. That is, intense concern with the philosophical problems. Second one is constant self-consciousness, that is the regular or the constant self-consciousness about its relation to the cultures of the West. Then third one is a strong tendency toward formal innovation and defiance. Defiance means opposing. Defiance of received or the existing generic norms. Generic norms means a standard or rule that exercised by a class or a group of people. Rule or standard that is exercised. That is the meaning of the term generic norms. So defiance or opposing that existing rules or standard or the belief of that particular class or group. So it's a strong tendency toward formal innovation and defiance of received generic norms. These are the three characteristic features that defined in the imperial and post-revolutionary periods. Then the combination of formal radicalism and preoccupation with abstract philosophical issues creates the recognizable aura of Russian classics. This is all about a general view about Russian literature. It is only a general view or general details regarding this particular branch, that is Russian literature. I think all of you understand this particular branch. Next, we are going to discuss about some important writers in Russian literature. First one is Alexander Pushkin. He was a Russian poet, playwright and novelist of the Romantic era. Romantic era. Please note that. That is the Romantic era. That is the Romanticism in Romantic era in Russian literature. So he was a Russian poet, playwright and novelist of the Romantic era, and he is considered to be the greatest Russian poet and the founder of modern Russian literature. He is considered to be the greatest Russian poet and the founder of modern Russian literature. Then he is considered to be the central representative of Romanticism in Russian literature. We can equate Alexander Pushkin with our William Wordsworth. That is one of the leading or the important figures or representative, one of the important central figure of Romanticism in English language and literature. That is William Wordsworth. And we can equate this Alexander Pushkin with our Wordsworth. So his Pushkin is considered to be the central representative of Romanticism in Russian literature, and he was the first to use everyday speech in his poetry. He was the first to use everyday speech, that is the language of the common people, that is language of the rustic people or the local language. He was the first to use, like our William Wordsworth. He also, yes, used that language of the common people, that simple language or the language of the rustic people in his writings. Like our William Wordsworth, here Pushkin is also, he was the first to use everyday speech in his poetry, fusing old Slavonic dialect with the vernacular Russian. This blend, that blending of two dialects, that is Old Slavonic and Vernacular Russian. This blend gave his works their rich melodic quality. He created the modern Russian language. That credit, that is, he created the modern Russian language. He rejected the high-blown style of classic Russian poetry. He rejected that high-blown style of classicism, that classic Russian poetry, and also breaking down the barrier between colloquial speech. Colloquial means this local language or local speech. Colloquial speech and the elevated odes of the post. He, yes, brought down the barrier between that colloquial speech and the elevated odds of the post. Then he identified the main themes that would keep Russian writers busy well into the 20th century. Which are the main themes he identified? The suffering of a humble individual of low rank, that is the suffering of the poor people, or the simple individual, or the suffering of this inferior, that the people, that is a humble individual of low rank, that is the inferior rank. Then confrontation between an exceptional character and society, that confrontation, that is extraordinary or exceptional character and a society. Then a painful choice between duty and personal happiness. Then a loner's rebellion against the system, that is the existing system. A loner's rebellion against the existing system of the society. So all these subjects were first raised by the writer Alexander Pushkin in Russian literature. Please note that the themes that he dealt with: the suffering of a humble individual of low rank, the confrontation between the exceptional character and society, the painful choice between duty and personal happiness, then a learner's rebellion against the system. All these subjects were first raised by Pushkin. Next, we are going to discuss about Maxim Gorky. He was a Russian and a Soviet writer, and moreover he was also a founder of the socialist realism literary method. Socialist realism, I already told you, that is regarding the emancipation of proletariat or the glorification of communist values. So he was a founder of the socialist realism literary method and a political activist, and he was also a five-time nominee for the Nobel Prize in Literature. That is, he was nominated 5 times for Nobel Prize in Literature. He was active with the emerging Marxist social democratic movement. He was active with the emerging Marxist social democratic movement. He publicly opposed the Tsarist regime. He publicly opposed Tsarist regime. Regime means rule. Tsarist regime means, Tsarist means belonging to or supporting the system of government by a Tsar. That is especially in Russia before 1917. So he publicly opposed that rule, the Tsarist regime, and his reputation grew as a unique literary voice from the bottom strata of society. That is, he was from a very poor family. He was from the bottom strata of society. So his reputation grew as a unique literary voice from the bottom strata of society. And by 1899, he was openly associating with the emerging Marxist social democratic movement. That is, he was closely associated with the communist idealism, and he was openly associating with the emerging Marxist social democratic movement during the time period of 1899. And at the heart of all his work was a belief in the inherent worth and potential of the human person. That is, most of his work dealt with, or he was believing in, or his belief was what? At the heart of all his work was a belief in the inherent worth. That is, he believed in the inherent quality, the inherent dignity or inherent worth and potential of the human person. That means he believed in the dignity of humanity, that inherent quality of humanity, or inherent worth and potential of the human person. So most of his work dealt with that particular theme, that is his belief. He believed in the inherent worth and potential of the human person. He adopted the pseudonym Maxim Gorky. Actually, this name is a pseudonym. He adopted this pseudonym that is Maxim Gorky, and choosing the name Gorky because it meant bitter. What is the meaning of the term Gorky? Because Gorky meant bitter, and he adopted the pseudonym of Maxim Gorky. And he wrote using knowledge gained from living in poverty and on the margins of society. I already told you he was from the bottom strata of society. That means he was from a poor family. And he wrote using knowledge gained from his own experience. That is, most of his work dealt with his own experiences. That is, the experience or the knowledge he gained from living in poverty and on the margins of society. Then his perspective won him great acclaim around the country. His perspectives or his ideals that won him great acclaim around the country. In 1892, his first short story Magar Chudra was published. Please note down that Magar Chudra in 1892. His first short story Magar Chudra was published, and then in 1895 the short story Chelkash about a thief and a peasant boy was published. In 1898, a Gorky collection Sketches and Stories was published. And he also penned the novel Mother in 1906. Please note down all these important works by Maxim Gorky. So in short, we can say that Gorky was a towering personality in Russian literature. It is one of the important figures in Russian literature. I think all of you understand about Maxim Gorky. Next, we are going to discuss about an important figure in Russian literature, that is Leo Tolstoy. You all are very familiar with this name, Tolstoy. So he was a Russian writer who is regarded as one of the greatest authors of all time, this Leo Tolstoy. And he is best known for the novels War and Peace. His publication year is 1869, and another important work by Leo Tolstoy, that is Anna Karenina in 1877. And these two novels that is often cited as pinnacles of realist fiction. Realistic fiction in the sense that means true to life or lifelike, that is the true expression of life. So these two works are often cited as pinnacles of realistic fiction. And he first achieved literary acclaim in his 20s with a semi-autobiographical trilogy. Trilogy means it's a combination of 3 works, that is childhood, boyhood and youth. So he first achieved literary acclaim, or he first achieved that literary fame in his 20s with his semi-autobiographical trilogy titled, trilogy means a group of 3 related novels. Here, which are the 3 related novels? Childhood, boyhood and youth. From the title itself, we can understand that this is a semi-autobiographical. That means about, to some extent, it is about himself. So, during his 20s, that is, he first achieved literary acclaim in his 20s with a semi-autobiographical trilogy, that is childhood, boyhood and youth, during the year 1852 to 1856. His literal interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus caused him to become a Christian anarchist and a pacifist. His literal interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus. His literal interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus caused him to become a Christian anarchist and a pacifist. Pacifist means one who against war and violence, that is considered this war and violence as unjustifiable. Then Christian anarchy or Christian anarchist. Christian anarchy, also known as Christian libertarianism. That means it is the belief that the only source of authority to which Christians are ultimately answerable is God. That is embedded in the teachings of Jesus. That is the belief existing in Christian anarchy, or that particular belief. Most are pacifist, that is Christian anarchists, most are pacifist and feel that earthly authorities such as government or the Christian church do not and should not have power over them. That is their belief. That is Christian anarchist. So his literal interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus caused him to become a Christian anarchist and a pacifist. He also became a dedicated advocate of Georgism. Georgism is the economic philosophy of Henry George. This Georgism is an economic philosophy, that means a single tax movement. That is Georgism. It's an economic philosophy. So this Leo Tolstoy, he also became a dedicated advocate of this particular economic philosophy, that is Georgism. And most of his fictions attempt to convey realistically the Russian society in which he lived. That is, most of his works are realistic fiction. That means the depiction of true life. So his fictions attempt to convey realistically the Russian society in which he lived. And his famous novel War and Peace explores Tolstoy's theory of history and the insignificance of individuals such as Napoleon and Alexander. After Anna Karenina, Anna Karenina is another important work by Leo Tolstoy. After Anna Karenina, he concentrated on Christian themes and developed a radical anarcho-pacifist Christian philosophy which led to his excommunication from the Russian Orthodox Church in 1901. Yes, after the publication of this work, Anna Karenina, he concentrated on Christian themes and developed a radical anarcho-pacifist Christian philosophy. I already explained what I mean. This is Christian anarchist and pacifist. So he developed a radical anarcho-pacifist Christian philosophy that led to his excommunication from the Russian Orthodox Church in 1901. Then he was a believer in the novel, not as a source of entertainment, but as a tool for psychological education and reform. That was his belief regarding literary works. He was a believer in the novel, not as a source of entertainment. He never considered this novel or fiction as a source of entertainment or pleasure, but considered it as a tool for psychological education and reform. And moreover, he did not believe in the idea of art for art's sake. He did not believe in the idea of art for art's sake. What do you mean by this art for art's sake? Art for art's sake, it is a phrase that coined from a French slogan from the early 19th century. Then it is a phrase that expresses the philosophy that the intrinsic value of art. That is the meaning of this particular art for art's sake. That is the it expresses the philosophy that the intrinsic or the that is the inherent quality or the intrinsic value of art, and the only true art is diverse or free from any didactic, moral, political or utilitarian function. That is the philosophy embedded in this particular phrase, art for art's sake. So it expresses the philosophy that the intrinsic value, that inherent value or quality of art, and the only true art is divorced from or the free from any didactic, moral, political or utilitarian function. That is the belief or the philosophy embedded in this particular phrase, art for art's sake. So our writer Leo Tolstoy, he did not believe in the idea of art for art's sake, and he never considered it as a source of entertainment, but as a tool for psychological education and reform. That means it has some didactic, moral purpose, utilitarian function or purpose. He did not believe in the idea of art for art's sake. So that was his belief. I think all of you understand this session and about Russian literature, about our writers, that is Maxim Gorky, Tolstoy and Alexander Pushkin. And students, there is a homework for you, and the homework is write a critical note on Russian literature Maxim Gorky, Alexander Pushkin, and Leo Tolstoy. Write your homework and send back to me through WhatsApp. Thank you. Have a nice day. See you again.